seen the fire in our nation's eyes when anger prowls for prey. I've heard good people draw their lines and call it holy rage, but the cross was never raised to bless the stones we throw. And if mercy leaves the house, there's something wrong down in the soul. Words ain't bullets, but they can hit the same. And once a heart turns cold enough, it forgets what grace is for. There's no room for hate in America tonight. No room in the home where the children need the light. No room in the heart where the Savior's supposed to stay. If Jesus owns the house, then hatred don't got no place. No room for hate. No, no room for hate. No room for hate. You can wave a flag above it, you can quote a verse or two, you can dress it up like justice till it almost sounds like truth. But outrage ain't righteous when it changes with the side. And you can't love your neighbor treating them like they're downrange. We're all image bearers, breath of God and dust. And you don't heal a broken land by teaching it not to trust. There's no room for hate in America tonight. No room in the home where the children need the light. No room in the heart where the Savior's supposed to stay. If Jesus owns the house, then hatred don't got no place. No room for hate. No room for hate. No room for hate. Drag it to the cross, lay it in the ground. Let the blood of Jesus turn the whole thing around. Truth can still be spoken, courage still can stand, but rage don't get to rule the soul of a faithful man. There's no room for hate in America tonight. No room in the home where the children need the light. No room in the heart where the Savior's supposed to stay. If Jesus owns the house, then hatred don't got no place.
Let revival start where the anger breaks.
Where the anger breaks.
Let healing rise up where the hurt gives way.
No room for hate.
No room for hate.
No, no room for hate.
No room for hate.
Not in Jesus' name. Oh, not in this house. Not in this heart. Not in His name. No room for hate.
Remember when entertainment was actually entertaining? When comedy was about being funny, movies were about telling great stories, and you didn't need a political lecture every time you hit play. Great entertainment still exists, it's just getting harder to find. Even the biggest streaming platforms leave audiences disappointed. That's why there's Studio TST, pure entertainment, real comedy, independent films, bold creators, movies, comedy, music, and more, and the home of fearless sketch comedy. That show tonight, entertainment the way you want it. Funny, creative, unapologetic, and agenda-free. Studio TST, the future of entertainment starts here. Join Studio TST today for just $5 a month.
Hello, friends. Do you have a moment so that we may discuss our Lord and Savior Minarchy? No, seriously, I'm just kidding. Hi, my name's Rick Robinson. I am the general manager of KLRNradio.com. We are probably the largest independent podcast network that you've never heard of. We have a little bit of everything, and by that, what I mean to tell you is we have news, pop culture, special events, conspiratainment, true crime, mental health shows, drama productions, and pretty much everything in between. So if you're looking for a new podcast home to grab a little bit of everything that you love all in one place, come check us out. You can find us on X under @KLRNradio. You can find us on our Rumble and our YouTube channels under the same names. You can also find us at KLRNradio.com and pretty much every podcast catcher known to man. So again, feel free to come check us out anytime you like at KLRNradio.
In uncertain times, we could use someone to lean on. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Oklahoma will stand by you with plan options to fit your budget. If you've recently lost your job, had a baby, or moved, you can still get the healthcare coverage you and your family need. Financial help may be available for those who qualify. Call 855-452-BLUE or visit hereforyouok.com to see if you're eligible to enroll. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Oklahoma, a division of Healthcare Service Corporation, a mutual legal reserve company.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
Got a vendetta. Coffee tastes like bad decisions I ain't made yet. Boss man talking about we got her, and that means me, brother. Afraid I got a terminal case of the I don't want us. Mind checked out, heart ain't in the building. That second hand's crawling like it hates my guts. The man treating rich like it's a sin. Even God took a beat. So, suck it. Thank God it's Friday, punching out loud. Hands in the air, middle finger to 9 to 5. Bill still waiting, but tonight I don't care. Cold beer sermon and the bar stool prayer. Take this job and shove it, I quit. Till Monday. 'Cause tonight I'm free. Yeah, work and wait. It ain't owning me. So raise 'em up high. Let the whistle blow. Thank God it's Friday. That's all I know. HR in the break room sounding like a preacher, talking about culture smiles and being team players. Clipboard dreams on the fluorescent light, selling hours of my life just to make it to Friday night. Got dirt on my jeans, and grease on my hands, clock more overtime than quality plans. that bell rings, it's a holy sound. Feel like change hit the floor when it echoes around. I ain't lazy, I just work my fill. If rest is a sin, guess I always will. Thank God it's Friday, punching out alive. Hands in the air, middle finger to 9 to 5. Bill still waiting, but tonight don't care. Cold beer sermon and a bar stool prayer. Take this job and shove it, I quit. Till Monday, cause tonight I'm free. Yeah, working way, it ain't on to me.
And welcome into the It's Finally Friday edition of The Rick Robinson Show, live right here on KLRradio.com. Hopefully you guys checked out our newest offering on Friday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, Jesus for Dummies. So hopefully you check that out this morning. If not, their archives are available on our website, so you can go find them there. Usually it takes a little while to show up on the crawler, though. So you can always check out our Spreaker page as well for those of you that used to keep up with us over there. Now, I do have a bit of breaking news to open with today. So, yeah, as usual, I plan a show, and Trump says no. Anyway, so at the time that I started, well, actually, right after I finalized the prep for the show, I started clicking around and realized there was a bit of what I would call a semi-breaking update out of Washington. President Trump says he is currently in the Situation Room making what he calls a final determination on Iran. The terms, at least publicly, are pretty clear. Iran does not get a nuclear bomb, like ever. The Straits of Hormuz reopened to unrestricted shipping, including no tolls. Any remaining mines come out of the water, and the enriched material Trump has been calling nuclear dust gets dug out and destroyed under international supervision. Now, the interesting piece here is not just the demand list, it is the timing. This comes amid reporting that there may be another ceasefire or negotiation framework on the table, and Trump is saying some lesser items have already been agreed to. So this is one of those moments where the administration is trying to put Iran in a box, take the deal, open the waterway, give up the nuclear material, or face whatever comes next. And that phrase, final determination, is doing a lot of work. That is not diplomatic filler. That is the president telling Tehran and, frankly, the rest of the world that the clock is running out. I think Trump might finally be at patience end with these folks, and I would say they should probably consider taking the deal or else. All right, so again, officially welcome in, my friends. It is Friday, and we made it. Barely, maybe, but we did make it. And today's show has one of those Friday mixes where the country is dealing with very serious things, very stupid things, and a few things that are serious because they started out rather stupidly, and then somebody handed them government power. But before we get into today's storyboard, let's do a quick callback real quick, because you remember Wednesday when we talked about, the Biden family trying to sue the DOJ because reasons. So we talked about this on Wednesday, and, the collapse of the 2024 Biden campaign narrative, not just the debate itself, but the entire cover story around it. First, it was a cold, then it was jet lag, then it was over preparation, then it was just one bad night. Now Jill Biden has come out and saying she actually watched the debate and thought, oh my God, he's having a stroke, which is interesting because they didn't go to the ER. They didn't make a trip to Walter Reed, none of that. They went to a Waffle House. So if that's true, that is terrifying on a human level because, again, she didn't take him to the hospital. If she thought he was having a stroke, why did they go to a Waffle House? But politically, the problem is what happened after that, because the public message afterward was not, we are concerned and we need answers. The public message was, Joe, you did such a great job. You answered every question. And what did Trump do? He lied. That is the trust problem we've been facing in this country. And I'm going to say this again. This started when we changed the word, when we added the word my to truth, because my truth becomes an up-jumped opinion. The truth is solid. It is concrete. There is truth, and then there is a lie. There is no gray area. There's no ambiguousness. There's none of that in between stuff. There's just the truth and there's a lie. The truth is Joe Biden had been a potted plant for a long time. The truth is, Joe Biden was a racist who never changed his inner heart. He just changed his messaging. But because he was able to change his messaging and because he had a D behind his name, he got a pass, just like we're seeing happen with this guy in Maine, Der Oystenführer, who is, he basically has a Nazi tattoo that he didn't cover over until everybody else realized, hey, that's a Nazi tattoo. He's like, really? I didn't know that. No, trust me. You do. So here's the thing, right? I could almost see it if it was like on his shoulder or his arm or something, where it was put kind of where he couldn't really see it all the time. And I didn't really, kind of like when you go to the tattoo parlors in Chinatown and you try to get this cool thing that they tell you is the symbol for peace, and it's actually Chinese for dumbass. Yeah, I could kind of see it if it was that. But the other thing is, and somebody else pointed this out, and I would love to give them credit again. I know I did at the time that I talked about it in this fashion. But the thing about that is, you don't put something that you don't understand next to your heart. Doesn't make any sense to do that. Doesn't make any sense to do that. But anyway, so back to this, because this is that big trust problem, because everybody, if they have a D behind their name, they get a pass. If they're Republicans, they are forever fascist. So the question was never just whether Biden had a bad night. The question was how many people saw what the country saw and then helped sell the public a different story. And the ironic thing about all of this, since we're coming back to this for a second, is how quickly the media turned on him. And they're doing it again, by the way, along with a lot of angry Democrats. As if I think it was Sam's piece out of Twitchy put out today, there are lots of Democrats who are suddenly angry about what happened with Joe Biden yet again. But where were they then? Where were they when it mattered? Because that's what we're dealing with in this country right now, is an overall trust problem with our government. We keep sending people to Washington, D.C. who keep saying, send us there and we're going to fix things, and then they never do. And then they don't understand why, now that they have somebody at the head of the ticket who isn't afraid to take risks, who isn't just saying, well, we have to hang on to the elections no matter what, and is willing to do the hard work, because Donald Trump is willing to do the hard work. And that let's face it, that's what we keep saying we want from folks we send to Washington. I don't want you focusing on your next election 5 minutes after you get sworn in. I want you working for me. That is what we keep saying we want. And then when we get those people, we don't honor them enough. We don't respect them enough. We don't talk about them enough. As a matter of fact, most of the time, they get shellacked by the establishment. The establishment on both sides has tried to take Donald Trump out multiple times, and they're still trying. So now what we have is complete and total political dysfunction, where one side is allowed to say whatever they want, whenever they want to say it, even though it's on record that they have said it, like Graham Plattner, Der Oystenführer, who basically said, this military service member is too stupid to still be breathing. But Donald Trump doesn't even say something that he gets credited with about suckers and losers, and the entire media melts down. This guy is actually on record saying it. There's proof of it. There's no way to take it out of context. And, well, it's okay. He was just venting. And that's my problem, because this is what sets up the entire show for today, because the whole board is around red lines and wake-up calls. And there are red lines around the courts. There are red lines around political intimidation. There are red lines around whether the tax code gets used as a revenge item. Voters are sending wake-up calls in Georgia, California, Texas, and right here in Oklahoma. America's 250th birthday is already becoming a political food fight, because apparently even fireworks and state fairs now need a crisis communications team. Iran is testing whether America means what it says. Rockets are exploding in giant fireballs. Air Force stories are reminding us what calling and responding to calls of service looks like. And Oklahoma City got punched in the mouth last night, which means Game 7 is either going to be a collapse or a wake-up call. I'm not saying it's not going to happen, because we won in Game 7 last time, and we all know that everybody plays harder in Loud City. So there's the thread for today, red lines and wake-up calls. So some people are testing the courts, some are testing the tax code. Voters are testing candidates. Iran is testing American patience and resolve. Billionaires are testing rockets. Some of those are blowing up rather spectacularly. And Oklahoma City is testing whether champions answer after they get hit. Let's start with the system itself, because this first block is not about one story. It's about the way people try to weaponize the machinery around them. So Justice Amy Coney Barrett's home was reportedly targeted by what appears to be a swatting attempt. That is the sanitized word we use now, swatting. But let's be clear about what that actually means. Swatting isn't a prank. It isn't like when you used to call a bar and say, "Is IP freely there?" No, it's an attempt. It's attempted violence by proxy. You are trying to turn police into the weapon and then pretend you only made a phone call. According to the reporting, police in Fairfax County received a report connected to Barrett's residence. Officers coordinated quickly with Supreme Court police personnel assigned to the home and determined the report was fictitious. That is the good news. The system worked. No additional police resources were used, and Justice Barrett and her family are safe. But the fact that this one thing was handled quickly does not make the tactic less dangerous. Somebody calls in a fake emergency report. They create a story involving violence, gunshots, danger, something that gets an armed response moving quickly. Then they sit back hoping chaos does the rest. That's not activism. That's not protest. That is definitely, by no definition of the words, free speech. That is somebody trying to weaponize the emergency response system against another human being. And this is the point that I want to drive home right now. Politicians are, in fact, human beings on both sides. Now, we may treat some of them as less than human, and normally it's after we feel that they have deserved to be treated as such, but we have to start being very careful with that, because we do this on our side too. Whoever's got the red banner is good, whoever's got the blue banner is bad, and march off to war and get her done. That's not always how this works. Now, there are people, and we'll be getting into some of those things later today, and we've already touched on one of them, who kind of deserve to at least be discussed in a way that puts some of the things that they're doing in much brighter light, so to see if they can survive the light of day. That's how I feel about Graham Plattner. That's how I feel about James Tallarico, or as Jesse Waters calls him, Talafrico. Because I feel like some of their arguments can't survive the light of day, and disinfectant is the best, sunlight is the best disinfectant. However, I'm not going to be somebody who calls 911 and tries to get the SWAT team to storm Tallarico's home or Mayor Bass's home or anybody like that. That's the whole point. One side is weaponizing all the things, and then they keep saying it's our fault that they're doing it. And it gets even worse when the target is a Supreme Court justice. That takes it into even more dangerous territory, in my opinion. But let's not forget, the left has been calling this court dangerous, MAGA, right-leaning, unconstitutional, and pretty much any type of buzzword, or shall we say dog whistle word, that they can use to stir people up. So we keep being told our institutions are sacred right up until someone disagrees with how one of those institutions rules. Then suddenly the sacred institution has a home address, and somebody should send the cops to go pound on the door or kick it in. Now, we're going to be careful here. I don't yet know, and neither does anybody affiliated with this show, who made the call or what their motive was. So I'm not going to assign a name, party, ideology, Democrat, or group to the caller until facts support it. That is how grown-ups handle information, Democrat. But I can say this: swatting has become part of the political warfare toolbox in America, and that should, in fact, bother everybody. Because once you decide the tactic is tolerable when it happens to people you dislike, you have already lost the moral argument when it happens to someone on your side. You can dislike a justice. You can criticize an opinion. You actually have a God-given right to do that. You can think a ruling is wrong. You can argue constitutional philosophy all day long and twice on Sundays. But the minute the argument moves from the courtroom to someone's front door, you are not defending democracy, or in this case, the republic. You are threatening the conditions that allow the republic to survive. And that brings us to the second half of the same idea, because sometimes the weapon is not a fake emergency call. Sometimes the weapon is the tax code. So I got to give some backstory here, which is going to push the break back a little bit, but that's fine. So look, Donald Trump, as a private citizen, had his tax information leaked. This is between his terms. Donald Trump, as a private citizen, sued the IRS for the unlawful disclosure of his tax information, just as any other private citizen has the right to do. Donald Trump won that settlement, won that suit, because as a private citizen, someone inside the IRS leaked his information and made it public, which is illegal and also a felony. He didn't take it to criminal court. He took it to civil court, and he won. And he won a judgment of $10 billion, which is a lot. But instead of taking the money, this is the part that none of these people that are screaming and yelling about his slush fund talk about. Instead of taking the money, he said, take part of the money and then put it into this. So for anybody else who has had the government weaponized against them, regardless of party affiliation, regardless of whatever, has the ability, if they need to seek remuneration for as long as the money remains available. And it was like $1.7 billion, I think, which means he gave us, the taxpayers, an $8.3 billion discount, and then didn't even take the money himself. He said, do this because I know what's happening to other people. But of course, now it's a J6 slush fund. None of it specifically mentions J6. As a matter of fact, it says anybody who feels that they have had the federal government weaponized against them has the ability to apply for this fund. It is nonpartisan. It doesn't have anything to do with the letter behind your name. But because it's being painted as a J6 slush fund and a way to give these people money, so now we're going into this. So the government allegedly weaponizes itself against people. A fund is created to compensate people who may have been harmed by that exact weaponization. Then some politicians look at that and say, great, let's tack the compensation at 100%, which I'm pretty sure is unconstitutional, but they're doing it anyway. So at some point, a 100% tax stops sounding like tax policy and starts sounding like a mugging on a letterhead. Even some of the coverage, not exactly known for being friendly to Trump world, is acknowledging the legal problems. You get into questions about whether a targeted 100% levy looks like a bill of attainder, which it does. You get questions about whether it is confiscatory, which it is. You get excessive fines concerns. You get taxing concerns, and you get the basic question of whether a tax that taxes everything is really a tax at all, because it's not. Because if the government takes 10%, 20%, 30%, people may argue policy. If the government takes 100%, that starts to sound less like revenue collection and more like retaliation. And that's where this fits the bigger theme. Swatting uses the police response as a weapon. This uses the tax code as the weapon. Different tools, same impulse. Use the badge, use the tax code, use the courts, use the bureaucracy, use whatever instrument is available to punish the people you think deserve it, and then call it public service. That is the quiet part being said out loud on today's show. If someone was actually wronged by government power, the proper answer is accountability. It is a review. It is compensation where appropriate. It is making sure the machinery of government does not get turned against citizens because they are politically inconvenient. The answer is not compensate them, then confiscate the compensation. That's not justice. That's the sequel, Retribution Part 2. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent reportedly had a pretty clean response to this idea. There's no cure for stupid, and I kind of agree, because that's actually about sharper than anything I would be able to add to this part of the conversation. But I will add this. There's also no cure for a political class that thinks losing an argument means it gets to punish the people who won. That is why people are tired of hearing no one is above the law from people who seem to mean our people are the law and you people are the target and you better get used to it. And if a 100% tax on compensation for alleged government abuse becomes the new standard, then we are not talking about tax policy anymore. We are talking about using the tax code as a revenge porn fantasy. That should bother everybody because sooner or later, every political weapon gets picked up by someone else. And this, you'll notice that is a play on a line I use all the time. just because you're okay with your side using this particular political weapon, whatever it might be, are you going to be just as comfortable when the other side gets a turn? Because the other side inevitably always gets a turn. And if the standard here is we can take away 100% of money going to people we dislike, then congratulations. You didn't defend democracy. You wrote a permission slip for the next round of fascism and abuse. That brings us to the thing Washington always pretends not to notice until it's too late. Voters are not in a polite mood right now. They are watching the courts, the media, the cities, the parties, the consultants, the slogans, and they are starting to ask a pretty simple question. Who actually sounds like they understand what is happening out here? So this brings us to Georgia, California, and Texas. We're going to have to save that for after the break, though. And unfortunately, my outline is no longer accurate because I pontificated a little bit too much in the beginning, which I have been known to do. But we're going to go ahead and do the military tribute now so we can get that done since it's the longer of the two, so we can have more time on the rest of the show to catch up.
Before the oath was spoken out loud, before you stood apart from the crowd, there was a moment, quiet and clear, when you chose to stand while others stayed here. You raised your hand with a steady resolve, knowing some nights don't end when the mission's done. Not for glory, not for the pay, but for something worth more than walking away.
Only hold the line.
They carried the weight where the roads ran long, through dust and heat
When the days went on,
holding ground mile after mile, doing the work
work that rarely drew a smile.
They stood their post when relief ran late, shoulders squared under the pull of fate.
Not chasing headlines, not asking why, just staying put when others pass by. We stand and watch in different ways, different nights, the same long days. One old spoken carried through, wherever duty calls us to.
We stand watch over the deep. They kept their watch where the water turns black, miles from shore with no quick way back, measuring time by the rise and the fall, answering duty's unrelenting call. Through silent hours and endless seas, they stood their post in the cold night breeze,
Guarding the lanes the world depends on, so others slept and the light stayed on. We stand the watch in different ways, different nights, the same long days. One old spoken carried through, wherever duty calls us to.
Simplify Marine.
We go where we're sent. We go where we're sent.
They moved as one when the moment came, side by side through fire and rain. First a step where the ground was thin, not for the odds but for the ones beside them.
Trust was earned in the hard way through, every promise carried by the few. No turning back once the line was crossed.
They stood shoulder to shoulder as brothers,
Never counting the cost.
but their focus where seconds seem eternal, soaring between clouds and blue. Every movement measured and true, knowing what one clean moment could do.
They watch the whole while guarding the small. Every mission tied to a larger call. Calm under pressure, steady and clear, keeping the promise from far overhead.
Space Force,
we guard the dark without
they
faith.
keep their vigil
Where silence reigns,
beyond the weather,
beyond the rain.
watching the paths that the world relies on, long before the warning lights come on.
Cloud, no banners, no clear view.
Just constant care in a canvas full of stars,
Standing the watch through the endless night,
guarding the systems that keep us in light. While the watch is kept and the lines hold fast, they're alive, still moving on the other side of that.
empty chairs and quiet phones, long goodbyes that don't feel done.
Names we carry but never say, folded flags and debts we pay. Every service, every scar reaches farther than the uniform ever could.
Coast Guard, we come when it matters most.
They launch into storms when hope feels thin. Turning back isn't an option then. Hands reach out where the waters rise, pulling lives back from the edge of time. No headlines waiting when the call is done, just breathing restored and another life won. Every rescue, every return, a quiet promise kept in the worst conditions. We stand the watch in different ways, different nights, the same long days. One oath spoken, carried through, wherever duty calls us to. For the ones who raised the right hand high,
Swore the oath and didn't ask us why.
for the nights you stood where freedom cost.
We remember, we honor, we won't forget the loss.
From the ground to the sea, to the open sky, to the guardians above where the silent stars fly. Every branch, every badge, every battle scar, because you stood.
We live free,
Lord, each know.
we stand here freely.
Because others stood before us. We accept the weight of what was given and the cost that came with it. We promise to remember those who serve, those who stand watch still, and those who never came home.
And welcome back into the program show again. This is the Finally Friday edition of the Rick Robinson Show. Don't forget, I'll be back at 3 p.m. Eastern as well for the Friday news, weekend news roundup. Sorry. There will be no he said, she said tonight. Aggie is off with family obligations. I'm trying to see if I can cobble together either a Men Explained Poorly, since we didn't do Tuesday's show, or maybe a Dude Bro show. But there may or may not be anything. Either way, make sure you come back later tonight for one of the installments of The Curse of Stephanos, our audio D&D campaign that one of our producers is involved in, and there's a fun group of folks that are doing it. Ordnance J. Packard Yes, that V. Charles. You may know them on X. Delaney, Janie Mack, and of course, the executive producer for none other than Jeff the Alien, his kid, lovingly called EP, who's not really a kid anymore. I still can't really wrap my head around that. He apparently just turned 18. I still think of him as 10. Anyway, so back to the program. I did do a check while we were on break. It looks like there have been no updates around the situation room. So we'll just dive back into things. And of course, if anything becomes breaking and I catch it, we'll definitely change gears. So before we went to break, we started talking about the fact that when the base talks, Washington better listen. We did a deep dive on that on Wednesday's show, but we kind of need to circle back around here to this again. So Georgia Republicans are looking at a Senate runoff and asking who actually sounds like the base. Los Angeles voters are looking at homelessness, crime, wildfires, city hall failures, and somehow Spencer Pratt, yes, that's Spencer Pratt, is making people say, well, at least he sounds mad about the right things. And in Texas, Republicans are not waiting until October to define James Tallarico. They are doing it right now because they know Democrats are going to try to sell him as fresh, young, reasonable, and shiny. The base has learned something that the consultant class hates. First impressions matter. If you do not define the race, the other side will. Now, as far as the Democrats, because they are really honestly trying to shape this guy as new, fresh, shiny, and awesome. Problem is, he's kind of not. So we're gonna start with Tallarico and then kind of work backwards into the California situation. Because I'm sorry, to me, LA potentially turning red for the first time in forever is kind of a big deal, and I'm hoping it happens, especially because I've seen, because I know people that live and work in California, so I've seen and heard about all the things that they have gone through, which are kind of insane when you think about it. So the fact that LA might actually be starting to vote like it has a brain again could be an amazing moment for us. I guess we'll find out soon enough. But so we'll get into Spencer Pratt in a second. But before we do that, we do have James Tallarico. Now here's a little bit of a snippet, and then I have some others.
They're going to throw everything they've got at us. They've already called me a radical leftist. They've already called me a fake Christian.
Okay, so regarding radical leftist, you've called women your neighbors with a uterus. That sounds pretty radical leftist. As far as being a fake Christian, last I checked, the God of the Bible is not non-binary, my friend. So it's not us calling you anything. We're just affirming what you've already said.
They've even called me a vegan. And
you also put out on one of your campaign ads that you were proud to be one of the only ever vegan campaigns in Texas. So why would they call you vegan? And plus, I know you tried to look all Texan by wearing a Texas flag shirt, which just looked weird on you, by the way. And then trying to eat what looked to be a beef rib, because it was you're either really small or that was a beef rib. I'm not sure which, because right now in the shot, I can't really tell how tall you are in this shot either. However, you ate it. You were eating the rib while holding it with a napkin. Dismissed.
And those are fighting words in the state of Texas. I'm an 8th generation Texan. I've been eating barbecue since before Ken Paxton's first indictment.
Which he was acquitted of, by the way. The media loves to talk about all the stuff that Ken Paxton brings to the table as far as baggage. However, they seem to forget that the impeachment didn't take, the indictments didn't stick. And I mean, as far as the marriage stuff, I can't throw stones. I've been divorced twice. So
they're going to call our movement un-Texan, un-American. They're going to call us a threat. The only truth out of all of those lies is that we are a threat. We're a threat to their corrupt system. They're going to throw...
We're a threat to their corrupt system. Yeah, okay. Okay, sure. All right, so looks like we have Mopower 9648, love Trump from Minneapolis. Awesome. I didn't know there were any Trump supporters in Minneapolis. At least the media doesn't want us to think so. So thank you for checking out the show. Hopefully you'll come back. And it's not just my show. Right now, it looks like you guys are listening from my personal YouTube. But I have another one, KLRN Radio, where we broadcast a lot of different things. We have faith-based programming. We have political programming. We have just fun stuff. So hopefully you guys that are finding us for the first time come back and check us out, because we've been around for a while, but we're really just now starting to push to build. Now that I feel like we have a pretty strong foundation, so to speak. Okay, so again, back to this. So the bases learn something the consultant class hates. First impressions matter. If you do not define the race, the other side will. So I think it's important that James Tallarico is trying to counter some of these things. But I also want to point out that Jessica Tarlov took the time on the 5, I believe it was yesterday or the day before, to point out that she doesn't think the low T push that Paxton is using is going to work. Well, if you didn't think it was going to work, you wouldn't be giving it any oxygen. So obviously it's working somewhere, or you wouldn't feel the need to counter it. Now, I know, well, then why are you bringing him up? Because look, this is what I talk about, but I don't really talk about it much on my social media stuff. I just talk about it on my show. I did, in fact, make a joke, though, that if Texas actually votes this guy in, I'm going to petition to change the T in Texas on the maps to a lowercase t. Took everybody a minute to get that joke, and sadly, I made the joke pre-coffee and didn't realize until like an hour and a half later that I actually misspelled petition. But to be fair, I've gotten kind of lazy. I have like 2 different AI programs that are supposed to catch typos, and it didn't. So neither one of them did. Okay. So anyway, so we're going to go to Georgia for a second before we circle back around to the mayoral race in California. So the Republican Senate primary there has moved into a runoff between Rep. Mike Collins and Derek Dooley. Collins led the first round. Dooley made the runoff, and now new polling has Collins opening up an even bigger lead. The winner faces John Ossoff in November, and that is a race Republicans badly want. But what makes this interesting is not just the Georgia math, it is the lane. Collins is being framed as the more MAGA-aligned, border security, working-class small business candidate. Dooley has the Kemp world support and more of a Georgia-first presentation, and that gives Republican voters a choice that sounds a lot like the argument inside the party right now. Are you looking for the person who feels like a fighter or the person who feels like they have a safer resume? Right now, in most primary situations, it looks like everybody's picking the ones they feel are the best fighter, not necessarily the ones with a safer resume. We'll see if Georgia Republicans hold that line or not, because they're basically having a family argument right now, the one that usually happens before Thanksgiving dinner. One side says America first, the other says Georgia first, and John Ossoff is sitting across town hoping they throw a lot of turkey and stuffing at each other. Now, let's move on to California, because if Georgia is the Republican family argument, Los Angeles is what happens when voters get so frustrated with City Hall that a reality TV personality starts sounding like a protest vote with hair gel. Now, look, I don't know that much about Spencer Pratt. I have never been a huge fan of reality TV. I will say this. I think he is hitting on a lot of stuff. I think he's making a lot of great points. And for once, he actually has celebrities that are supporting him. And actually, I think I have a clip for that. Hang on. I didn't realize I left that other one on the screen for so long. But I am my own producer, so if things go wonky from time to time, now you know why. There it is. Okay, so yeah, it was just the next one down. All right, so now he said on Gutfeld last night he doesn't really care whether celebrities endorse him or not, but I kind of think, to me, this one's kind of a big deal. It's probably just me, but I've always kind of liked this guy, so. Volume on this is really big.
Mayor race? Spencer Pratt. Go Spencer Pratt.
And why?
Why? What are you talking about? Why? Just look around, man. Why?
Okay, so good thing that one actually had captions because I didn't realize how low the volume was going to come through on the feed. But I love the answer to the question when they were like, "Why?" And he's like, all you really got to do is look around, my dude." Which is true. I mean, LA is a mess. We talk about this all the time because again, Sean with SHR Media lives in California. Orty lives in California. BZ with SHR Media used to live in California. So these are all things that are near and dear to them because they've been watching some of this happen firsthand. And they do have very staunch concerns. I mean, the interesting thing about this is, up until 5 seconds ago, the entire Republican regime was pointed at Virginia. That didn't really seem to do too much good because she still won. I think it was probably the best campaign ad for Republicans that she did win, though, because I've said this before. The crazies on the left side, all they really had to do was keep their powder dry until after the midterms. And I think we would be looking at a completely different situation right now. Now, you guys know, historically speaking, the midterms usually favor the party that's not in power. I'm not so sure this is going to happen this way this time because people in New York City are seeing what happens now that they've elected a commie. People in Virginia believed Spanberger, and yes, I mispronounced her name on purpose, when she said she was going to govern as a moderate, and she hasn't done that. So things are blowing up all over the place for the Democrats. Now you've got this guy in Texas who eats barbecue with a napkin, thinks God is non-binary, thinks there are 6 genders, which I get it. From a theological perspective, he's not necessarily wrong. In Judea, in the Torah, there actually were, for legal reasons, multiple genders, but that's because of how everything used to be completely male-centric. So they had folks that were female who looked male. Legally, they got to be treated like men, so they could own property. They could do all the things men could do. Then there were women or men who looked more effeminate. They were treated like women and had their rights changed and taken away. But again, this was for legal purposes, not actually saying, hey, there are 6 different genders. These were still outward physical characteristics that were being shaped for legal reasons to be either, for the folks that are more androgynous, for the men who look like women, for the women who look like men. These weren't actually separate genders. But I think somebody like Talafrico got a hold of this a while ago because that's what I keep hearing is there are 6 genders, there are 7 genders, depending on which version of the Torah you look at, there are the capability for up to 7 different legal definitions of a gender. Not actual gender differences, but just legal different definitions. And again, we're taking something and twisting it into something that it is not, which the Democrats are usually very, very good at. Problem is, we didn't realize how much of this was all astroturfed and being propped up by things like USAID and the Southern Poverty Law Center and all these other NGOs that are now suddenly being defunded and suddenly the Democratic Party's broke. Does anybody else find that rather coincidental? I find that rather coincidental. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just me. All right, so back to my outline here. So Spencer Pratt is running for mayor of Los Angeles, and I'm not necessarily saying that he's the answer to Western civilization. I am saying that he might be the best answer for LA because the fact is he is getting traction, and that should tell you something. Los Angeles is dealing with homelessness, public safety concerns, fire recovery, which isn't really happening, infrastructure frustration, and a deep sense among a lot of voters that the people in charge keep using the right language while the city keeps getting worse. Mayor Karen sorry, me trying to talk, take 2. Mayor Karen Fishface Bass is trying to defend her record. Nithya Raman is in that progressive lane as well. Pratt is running as an outsider using social media, AI videos, and the language of voter anger. And I will say this, the videos that are being put out are not actually part of Pratt's campaign, but whoever is doing those videos have been amazing. I will say this, the first Batman video that they put out where I know they tried to work in a cool song because they had Rubio as the DJ, and I get that. but they missed. They missed, in my opinion, and that's probably the only one I've seen that I consider a miss, because they really should have ended with the 1960s campy Batman theme and then had it saying Pratt Man. Just saying. So, again, before we go to break, we are going to circle back around to Texas for a second, because Ken Paxton is set up against James Tallarico, and Democrats clearly want to turn Tallarico into the shiny new object. Young, energetic, religious language when useful, social media friendly. So social media friendly that apparently there are posts out where he's now been seen texting with former students at just before midnight about school choices, and sold as a different type of Texas Democrat. You can already see the pitch forming: fresh face, new generation, not your grandfather's Democrat. Maybe this is the one who finally changes Texas. They hope. I don't see it happening. Republicans are not waiting for that story to harden. They are defining him now. That's politics 101, and it is also something Republicans have often been terrible at. Democrats introduce a candidate as moderate, reasonable, relatable, and inspiring. Republicans wait 6 months and then say, well, actually, he's pretty radical. By then, the first impression has already been written. This time, Paxton's side is trying to write the sentence first and write that first sentence themselves. Texas Republicans are not waiting until October to define James Tallarico. They are doing it now, because if you let the other side write the first sentence of the story, you spend the rest of the campaign trying to edit it. Now, you've already seen that Tallarico is on the defensive. He's out saying, hey, I've always eaten ribs. Well, that's funny, because I know for a fact there was a campaign video where you were talking about being proud that you were the first vegan campaign in Texas. So were you lying then, or are you lying now? And I get it. It's a small thing. It's ribs. It's barbecue. But if you're willing to lie about the small things, just saying. So as we continue this here, we have to ask ourselves one question. So what do Georgia, California, and Texas all have in common? The voters are in a pissy mood. They're not asking for perfect candidates. They're not reading the white papers. They're not sitting around waiting for consultants to tell them which font tested best with suburban persuadables. They are asking who sounds like they understand the fight, who sounds like they see the problem, who sounds like they are not embarrassed by the people they claim to represent. And that is the wake-up call, and as it should be for both parties. For Republicans, the message is do not assume the base is going to show up for someone just because the letter R is next to the name. That is the party line of the Democrats and has been for forever. And I quote former, and I guess Speaker Emeritus, whatever that means, Nancy Pelosi, who, when she was mad at AOC, said she better be careful because I can run a glass of water with a D on it and win in that district. Yeah, so voters want fighters, and they can smell weakness, and they're starting to get tired of how that smells. For Democrats, the message is don't assume voters will keep accepting failure if you wrap it in the right language. And that's where we're going to have to leave it for the moment. We are at top of the hour. I don't know if I'm going to get through my entire show prep because I think I may have over-prepared today. But we're going to keep this rolling and come back here in just a minute for top of hour 2. If you are new around here, please make sure you are liking the feed, sharing the feeds. If you like what we do around here, whether you see us on X, Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, make sure you're hitting that subscribe or follow button, whichever one you have access to. And make sure you tell your friends. If your friends like us, you probably need some new friends, but we still like having you here. My name's Rick Robinson. This is my show, and this is the Finally Friday edition. Back for hour 2 in just a minute.
I've seen the fire in our nation's eyes when anger prowls for prey. I've heard good people draw their lines and call it holy rage, but the cross was never raised to bless the stones we throw. And if mercy leaves the house, there's something wrong down in the soul. Words ain't bullets, but they can hit the same. And once a heart turns cold enough, it forgets what grace is for. There's no room for hate in America tonight. No room in the home where the children need the light. No room in the heart where the Savior's supposed to stay. If Jesus owns the house, then hatred don't got no place. No room for hate. No, no room for hate. No room for hate. You can wave a flag above it, you can quote a verse or two, you can dress it up like justice, till it almost sounds like truth. But outrage ain't righteous when it changes with the side. And you can't love your neighbor, treating them like they're downrange. We're all image bearers, breath of God and dust. And you don't heal a broken land by teaching it not to trust. There's no room for hate in America tonight. No room in the home where the children need the light. No room in the heart where the Savior's supposed to stay. If Jesus owns the house, then hatred don't got no place. No room for hate. No room for hate. No room for hate. Drag it to the cross, lay it in the ground. Let the blood of Jesus turn the whole thing around. Truth can still be spoken, courage still can stand, but rage don't get to rule the soul of a faithful man. There's no room for hate in America tonight. No room in the home where the children need the light. No room in the heart where the Savior's supposed to stay. If Jesus owns the house, then hatred don't got no place.
Let revival start where the anger breaks.
Where the anger breaks.
Let healing rise up where the hurt gives way.
No room for hate.
No room for hate.
No, no room for hate.
No room for hate.
Not in Jesus' name. Oh, not in this house. Not in this heart. Not in His name. No room for hate.
Remember when entertainment was actually entertaining? When comedy was about being funny, movies were about telling great stories, and you didn't need a political lecture every time you hit play. Great entertainment still exists, it's just getting harder to find. Even the biggest streaming platforms leave audiences disappointed. That's why there's Studio TST, pure entertainment, real comedy, independent films, bold creators, movies, comedy, music, and more, and the home of fearless sketch comedy. That show tonight, entertainment the way you want it. Funny, creative, unapologetic, and agenda-free. Studio TST, the future of entertainment starts here. Join Studio TST today for just $5 a month.
Hello, friends. Do you have a moment so that we may discuss our Lord and Savior Minarchy? No, seriously, I'm just kidding. Hi, my name's Rick Robinson. I am the general manager of KLRNradio.com. We are probably the largest independent podcast network that you've never heard of. We have a little bit of everything, and by that, what I mean to tell you is we have news, pop culture, special events, conspiratainment, true crime, mental health shows, drama productions, and pretty much everything in between. So if you're looking for a new podcast home to grab a little bit of everything that you love all in one place, come check us out. You can find us on X under @KLRNradio. You can find us on our Rumble and our YouTube channels under the same names. You can also find us at KLRNradio.com and pretty much every podcast catcher known to man. So again, feel free to come check us out anytime you like at KLRNradio.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
Alarm clock barking like it's got a vendetta. Coffee tastes like bad decisions I ain't made yet. Boss man talking about we got her, and that means me, brother. Afraid I got a terminal case of the I don't want us. Mind checked out, heart ain't in the building. That second hand's crawling like it hates my guts. The man treating rich like it's a sin. Even God took a beat. So suck it. Thank God it's Friday, punching out loud. Hands in the air, middle finger to 9 to 5. Still waiting, but tonight I don't care. Cold beer sermon and a bar stool prayer. Take this job and shove it, I quit.
And welcome back into the Smiling Friday edition of the Rick Robinson Show. Sorry to cut. I know normally I try to let the whole thing play on Fridays, but I feel pressed for time. Just to let you know how much I've over-prepared. We're into the beginning of hour 2, and I've just now reached the point in my notes where it's saying break for mid of hour 1. So, yeah. But it doesn't help that there keeps being breaking news. I'm still checking back to see if we have anything else happening with the Situation Room, because I have had a feeling for a few days there's about to be another shoe that's going to drop. You can ask BZ. I started telling him on, I think it was Saturday night, that my spidey senses kept tingling. I was expecting it before now, but I think Trump may have finally had enough. I guess we'll see. Either that or they finally managed to bend Tehran over the table. I guess we'll find out together at some point, hopefully later today, if not sooner. Anyway, so welcome into the program, ladies and gentlemen. Again, my name is Rick Robinson. We do this thing every Friday night. Friday. We do this every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday starting at noon. So before we get back into my notes, this is a comment that I missed from very early on in the show. And I'm guessing they may have made this comment while I was playing one of the songs that we wrote. But I have to disagree. And well, disagree on his faith or on its face, because faith has a place in pretty much every argument. Religion, religion is where you start running into speed bumps and roadblocks like Islam. Faith is when you hold in your heart the things that you believe and you learn that you need to stand up and stand for those things. And as a popular singer once said, you got to stand for something or you're going to fall for anything. So faith has a place in every argument. And our founding fathers, to the last of them, were people of faith. They may have disagreed on what that faith was, but even the ones that everybody tries to frame as atheists were agnostics because they had a faith. They just weren't sure they bought into the whole argument of the Bible, especially because they had gone. This was the time when the whole Christian Reformation was starting to happen, and they fled because King James hijacked the Catholic Church and basically made an Anglican church, and they were trying to get away from a lot of that. But faith has a place in every argument, so I disagree with your comment if you're still listening. But thank you for making the comment, and we're allowed to disagree. That's okay. Okay, so back to the notes, so I can hopefully get through most of the show. I can't really run too long because I have to be back at 3 for the Weekend News Roundup anyway. All right, so so Washington's discovered a brand new scandal. We're going to be talking about that. The Treasury Department is preparing for America's 250th birthday, but here's the thing. So I believe it was the Washington Times put out a piece behind a paywall claiming that Donald Trump was pushing for the idea of a $250 American bill. Except the problem is, since it was behind a paywall, almost nobody could read it, but that wasn't true. So Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent was at the briefing where this was brought up, and CNN's Caitlin Collins asked about this Washington Post story involving a possible $250 banknote connected to America's 250th birthday. Now, let me say this up front. A $250 bill is kind of a weird idea. I do not know who needs one. Maybe people buying eggs in California right now. Maybe someone trying to pay for a hot dog at a stadium. Maybe a dad taking 4 kids to the movies and realizing he should have applied for a small business loan. But the media angle here is the fun part. The Washington Post apparently tried to turn this into palace intrigue. Trump administration officials supposedly pressed the Bureau of Engraving and Printing to prepare designs or prototypes connected to a $250 bill in connection to America's 250th birthday. The concern was that federal law does not allow living people to appear on U.S. currency. And Bissett's answer was basically yes. Treasury prepares things in advance, and the story you wrote seems to prove we are following the law, which is hilarious because only in Washington can a story boil down to the Treasury Department is preparing for something while still obeying federal law, and somehow the headline comes out looking like the plot of National Treasure 3. Apologies to Nicolas Cage. Speaking of, I'm actually maybe checking out Spider Noir this weekend. I realized it just dropped on Prime, and apparently I'm hearing some good things about it. But I also go into this understanding that Nicolas Cage only ever plays Nicolas Cage. So that is one of the America 250 fights. Then there's the music fight. Martina McBride is pulled out of the Great American State Fair, a Freedom 250 linked event in the National Mall, saying she believed she was signing up for a nonpartisan celebration of all 50 states, but later felt misled about the event's nature. Now, there is a distinction here. Freedom 250 is not the same thing as the official congressionally chartered America 250 Commission. That is fair to note. If an artist was told one thing and later believed the event was something else, she can make her own call. But my problem with this is Her entire thing is she didn't really want to seem like she was being political, but she had absolutely no problem at all performing for Barack Obama. So the larger cultural issue is still worth talking about. How did celebrating America suddenly become radioactive? This is the 250th birthday of the country. We should be able to have music, state fairs, food, flags, stories from all 50 states, veterans, families, fireworks, and yes, even patriotism, without everyone acting like the mere existence of red, white, and blue bunting is a campaign contribution. A lot of artists have performed in political adjacent settings before, her included. That does not mean every performance is an endorsement of every politician in the zip code. Sometimes a song is just a song. Sometimes a national celebration is just a national celebration. But in 2026, everything gets filtered through the question, will the wrong people approve? We are apparently at the point where celebrating America's 250th birthday is controversial because America might actually show up. If we cannot celebrate the country's 250th birthday without checking whether the stage has cooties, we may have a bigger civics problem than one canceled concert. And here is where the America 250 conversation gets a little more hopeful, because while everybody's fighting over who sings, who gets offended, and whether a commemorative bill is secretly the collapse of the republic, there's also a basic civic truth here. If the country's turning 250, maybe clean up the front porch. And there is a good story out of Washington about the restoration of Columbus Circle outside Union Station. The area had been fenced off for renovation, and now officials are showing off the restored foundation and plaza. The fountain had not been running since 2007. That is almost 20 years of one of the front doors of the nation's capital sitting there as a symbol of neglect. And this is where I think regular people understand something the consultant class misses over and over again. Public spaces matter, not because fountains solve every problem, not because cleaning up one plaza fixes Washington, but because symbols matter. The capital city matters. The front door matters. If you let the front door of the country become a campground, a graffiti wall, and a symbol of neglect, people notice. And if you clean it up, people start noticing that too. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy has also talked about a major grant for Union Station improvements, structural repairs of the roof, the passenger areas, ticketing areas, security, family-friendly infrastructure. That is the kind of America 250 story I actually like. Not another panel discussion where people explain why patriotism is complicated. Not another grievance fest seminar with better lighting. Just basic civic competence. That's a thing, and it always should be. Turn the fountain back on, fix the roof, clean up the plaza, make the place look like the country is worth caring about. If America is about to throw a 250th birthday party, maybe step one is making sure the front porch doesn't look like it lost a knife fight with a spray paint can. So yes, America 250 is already getting weird. We have currency drama. We have concert drama. We have people acting like patriotism is contagious. I'm not sure why it shouldn't be. But we also have a fountain running again after nearly 20 years. And honestly, that may be the better metaphor. The country does not need another committee explaining why we should feel complicated about being American, because you shouldn't feel complicated about being American. If you are here and you have come here legally, whether through birth or through the process, and you're not proud to be here, you should just leave. Just gonna say it out loud. You should just leave. Because if you're not proud to be an American, we don't need you here. And we need adults willing to clean up the mess, turn the water back on, and act like the place is worth taking care of. And this is where the birthday party fight turns into the history fight, because once celebrating America becomes controversial, the next battle is always over what America even is. And this brings us to Illinois. Selective memory in the state house in Illinois is actually a thing. There was a moment in the Illinois Capitol where a speaker offered language about Islam being woven into the fabric of America, not beginning in 1965, not arriving in the 20th century, but being part of the very tapestry of the nation. To which I say this, and if you're not watching on video, you don't know what I'm saying. So that's not my fault. Now, this is one of those stories where everybody needs to take a breath before the shouting starts, or maybe not. The issue is not whether Muslims have existed in American history, because they probably have, There were enslaved Africans brought to America who were apparently Muslim. I'm not sure I believe that, but according to my notes, it was a thing. There have been Muslim Americans in the broader citizens today who live here, work here, raise families here, and have the same constitutional protections as everybody else. Now, all that being said, my question is, should they have the same constitutional protections as everybody else? Because again, and this is just me being honest, my problem with Muslims is I keep being told there are way more peaceful Muslims than there are the terrorist type Muslims. But my question is, why do those peaceful Muslims never do anything to shut down and shut up the terroristic Muslims? Because we do that all the time as Christians. When is the last time you heard anything about Westboro Baptist Church? Because they started being stupid and retarded, and we went and found them and beat them up and shoved them in a corner and said, sit there, shut up, and don't fucking move. So if there are millions upon millions of peaceful Muslims, why have they not taken out their own trash? So that's my problem with all of this. So no, I don't want to see American history be rewritten to make Islam look like it's an important part of American culture, because it never has been, never will be, as far as I'm concerned. And hopefully, if it ever becomes one, I will be long dead, because it doesn't deserve to be. Islam is not a religion. I've said this before. Islam is sorry, trying to calm back down a little bit. Islam is a political system wrapped in religious language. No more, no less. The actual translation for the name Islam is submit. Does that sound peaceful to you? Their own book says they're allowed to lie to you, specifically and especially if it helps them survive. Does that sound peaceful to you? Their entire book calls to kill the kafir. Guess what? To them, I am a kafir. You are kafir. That's basically the word for cattle in their language. So they consider us nothing more than cattle. So this isn't about inclusion. This is about people trying to rewrite history. And again, if there's anybody who's practicing the Muslim faith who is listening to me, if you want to email me and explain why you guys have not cleaned your own house yet, I am willing to listen. Shoot, email me. If you want to come on and talk about it, I will set it up so we can do that. Rick@klrnradio.com. If you are Muslim and Islamist and you are a practicing Islamist and you have an explanation to me as to why you guys have not cleaned up your own house, I am willing to listen. But I don't want to hear about rewriting American history. This is the thing. Christianity plainly shaped the culture, language, moral imagination, legal assumptions, and public life of the American founding era, despite what your college professor wants to tell you. That does not mean every founder was an Orthodox Christian. As a matter of fact, they were not. We've talked about it before. But every founder was a person of faith. Even if they didn't necessarily know how to describe that faith, they knew that something created us. They just weren't willing to narrow down what that something was. That's not atheism. That's agnosticism. And there is a difference. It does not mean America is a church. That's actually what they were trying to get away from. It does not mean the Constitution is a sermon. But if you try to tell the story of America's founding while treating Christianity as some embarrassing later additional footnote, you're not doing history. You're doing activism with footnotes. Yet, we have watched for years as public Christianity gets treated like a constitutional biohazard. A coach prays and everybody panics. A town has a cross and suddenly the republic is in danger. A Bible verse shows up and the lawsuits start warming up in the bullpen. But if the prayer serves the right diversity narrative, suddenly the same people discover nuance. Suddenly religion has a public role. Suddenly faith, traditions are part of the fabric of America. Suddenly the state house can sound like a seminary as long as it's not the wrong seminary. And that's what I'm reacting to here. Not individual Muslims, although if you're a practicing Muslim and you can explain to me why it is you haven't cleaned your own house, I would love for you to do so. Not religious liberty, because it should be a thing, although I don't really believe, Islam is a religion. It is a governmental system. Not the First Amendment. The problem is selective memory and selective outrage. And this matters, especially heading into America's 250th birthday, because the closer we get to that anniversary, the more you will see people try to retell the American story in a way that makes the founding itself seem either meaningless, evil, or infinitely editable. Every favored modern identity becomes foundational. Every unfavored historic influence becomes suspect. Christianity gets demoted from civilizational force to an awkward guest at the party. And regular people hear all this and think, wait a minute, I know the country wasn't perfect. I know the history is complicated, but do not stand in front of me and tell me the people who quoted scripture, built churches, wrote sermons, framed public morality in biblical language, and understood rights as coming from the Creator were somehow less central to the American story than whatever fashionable line the State House wants to run this week. America can protect religious liberty for everyone, except potentially the Muslims, without pretending every religion played the same role in the founding. Those are different claims. One is constitutional principle, the other is historical revisionism. And we do not need to lie about America to include people in America. That's kind of the whole point of America. All right. So again, I told you, I don't think I'm going to get to all of my notes. So we're going to do some trimming here because I realized we're already almost to the bottom of the hour too. I do want to talk about this though, because to me, this is kind of important. So, and this is local to Oklahoma. So I know a lot of you are like, I don't really care. Dude, I talk about your states all the time. I can talk about mine for a few minutes. So we're going to bring this home to Oklahoma for a second because voters here are about to make a real decision with real consequences. On June 16th, Oklahoma will vote on State Question 832, which is a minimum wage measure. The basic idea is to raise the state minimum wage in steps until it reaches $15 an hour by no later than 2029. And then beginning in 2030, automatically adjust based on cost of living, which sounds great on paper. So that last part really matters, though. The headline is, should Oklahoma raise the minimum wage? But the fine print is, should Oklahoma put future wage increases on autopilot? And anytime government says, don't worry, we'll just put this on autopilot, taxpayers and small businesses should at least ask who gets to land the plane. Now, everybody wants people to make more money. Nobody's sitting around thinking, you know what? Oklahoma needs more broke people. No, we definitely don't need more of those. That's not the question. The question is whether government can order wages higher without also ordering prices to go higher, hours being cut, and hiring and automation to move in with them, because it will. We don't even have a $15 an hour minimum wage in Oklahoma, and you already can't go to a fast food restaurant without being told you should probably order from the app if you want to use the drive-thru, or if you're going to come inside, we prefer you use the kiosk first. Because economics has a nasty habit of showing up after the campaign slogan leaves town. California is the best example of this and does give us a test kitchen, so to speak. It's not a perfect comparison because Oklahoma is not California, but we may be taking a step in that direction with this stupid state question. We still know how to pronounce business climate without hissing, but California raised the wage floor for many fast food workers to $20 an hour, and the data afterward has been exactly the kind of messy data politicians hate. Some studies say wages went up, employment did not collapse, and prices rose only modestly, unless you live there. Other research finds employment pressure, price pressure, and more concern about what businesses did quietly behind the scenes. Fewer hours, slower hiring, lots more automation, more kiosks, more apps, more AI ordering, more ways to reduce dependence upon labor. And that is the point. Politicians sell minimum wage hikes like they are magic. Voila! Vote yes and wages go up. Everybody wins. Nothing else changes. But businesses are not magic machines. If labor costs rise, especially for labor-heavy businesses, owners have to respond. They can raise prices. They can cut hours. They can delay hiring. And normally they do a combination of all of those things. They can use fewer people per shift. They can automate. They can close marginal locations. They can decide not to expand. Big chains have options. They can absorb the costs, spread them out, negotiate, automate faster, and survive. Small businesses have a lot fewer of escape hatches. The local diner, the family store, the small shop, the little restaurant that already gets hammered by inflation Those are the people who feel the squeeze first. And those are the people that, according to the Democrats, they're always fighting for when they propose things like this, but they're the first ones who get squeezed out. And this is where the Oklahoma question gets real. If voters want to raise the wage, that is their decision, but they should be honest about what they are voting on. They're not just voting to make paychecks bigger. They are voting to change the cost structure for employers across the state. They are voting to make automation more attractive. They are voting to raise the floor and then to let future increases happen automatically without the same public fight every time. And again, the automatic part is the sleeper issue. You can pass a law today based on today's feelings on the economy, today's prices, today's politics. But indexing means tomorrow's increases happen because the formula says so. The voters did not get the same debate each time if this passes, and they won't. Lawmakers do not have to own each increase each time it just happens. That might sound efficient. It might also sound like putting a major labor policy on cruise control. And look, Oklahoma is not going to turn into California overnight, but it doesn't mean we won't turn into them eventually. We do have a different economy, different costs, different politics, different business climate, but pressure moves in the same direction, raise the cost of labor, and businesses respond to that new cost of labor. The real question is not whether people would like to make more money, because of course they would. The real question is whether Oklahoma wants wage policy made by market pressure, legislative debate, or ballot box autopilot. And that is what voters need to think through before June 16th. All right, so we're going to get into the last little bit of the show on the other side of the break. We haven't done the law enforcement tribute yet, so we're going to do that now. When we come back, a little bit more America 250 fun, including Splody rockets. Speaking of rockets, red glare, it happened. It happened big. We'll talk about that when we get back.
When the call comes in, somebody answers. Day or night, they're already moving. Calm voices, fast hands, doing the work while the rest of the world freezes. From a headset to a truck, from a badge to a door, they don't stop to count the cost. They step in when it matters. It's not about being seen, it's about being there. They're holding the line when the lines go dead, standing their ground when the world goes dark. They're the calm in the chaos, holding the line through the fire, the flood. When everything falls, they don't ask why, they just answer the call. Always standing in the gap for us all. Before the sirens fade, before the scene is clear, someone's already making sense of the moment. Keeping people alive, keeping things from getting worse. Some run toward danger, some stay behind and hold it together. Different roles, same weight, same promise to show up. When everything's on the line, they're already there. They're holding the line when the lines go dead, standing their ground when the world goes dark. They're the calm in the chaos, holding the line through the fire, the flood. When everything falls, they don't ask why, they just answer the call. Always standing in the gap for They're holding the line when the world goes dark. When everything's breaking, they hold their ground. They're the calm in the chaos, holding the line. So we raise our voices for the ones who stand. Every voice, every badge, every helping hand. They don't ask why, they just answer the call. Always standing in the gap for us all. Always standing in the gap for us all. For those who run and for those who hold steady. For those who stand in the gap.
All right, welcome into the program, ladies and gentlemen. Final segment of the It's Finally Friday edition. Don't forget, I'll be back in about an hour and 20 for the weekend news roundup to get you ready for everything that you might need to know. Speaking of, quick hit on the way before we get back into the notes. Everybody was having kittens a few weeks ago when they found out that the administration bought the domain for aliens.gov. Except turns out it wasn't about extraterrestrials. So the White House has launched an alien website confirming the existence of aliens walking among us in the United States. They walk among us. For 60 years, the U.S. government has kept this closely guarded secret. Aliens have been walking among us, living in our... Hang on, I have to expand on this now because it did the stupid show more thing. Aliens have been walking among us, living in our neighborhoods, and interacting with us. The aliens, the website reveals, are not from a distant planet, but are the illegal variety. So apparently the website has been and will be displaying a live map of every illegal alien arrest. So I don't know. As a guy who does a conspiratainment show twice a month, usually, we're going to get back on that this Saturday. I'm a little sad. I was having Fox Mulder moments and they stole those from me. I was like, they're finally going to tell us the truth, man. And then they did, just not the truth I was looking for. Anyway, all right. So, as promised, we're going to get into some of the little. I try to do a little bit more fun stuff on Fridays, even when the chat's being. Anyway, yeah. Speaking of rockets, red glare. Now, I will admit this is an engine test. If you're going to have things like what I'm about to show you happen, this is the time that hopefully they would happen. But when you stress test an engine, this is kind of the last thing you really want to see happen. And it's going to be, there we go. Wait, hang on. Let me fix it because this is supposed to have audio. I thought it was supposed to have audio. Maybe it doesn't. I'm not hearing anything, though. Maybe this one's too far away. Anyway, you can still see it even if you can't hear it. But I could have swore this one was supposed to have audio. Oh, wait, there it goes. Oof. There's the kaboom. There's the loud earth-shattering kaboom. Oh my God, dude. As somebody who's always been a space nerd, that was terrifying to watch, which means we're probably going to watch it again. Now, I looked for a clip that I saw on the news earlier this morning and couldn't find it. Apparently, there were folks that were driving down the road when this thing happened, and they were like, yeah, none of that's normal. This is not normal. And he's like, oh my God, that's a very big explosion. And then like 10 seconds later, he's like, and here's the shockwave. And that's when you know it's a really big explosion, when you are miles away from it and you can still feel the shockwave of the explosion. So, yeah, just no, just ouch, just no. But again, I mean, if you're gonna have spectacular failures, this would be the place and time that you're supposed to be having them. I guess is during the testing phases. So, this is from our friends over at PJ Media. This is put up by Stephen Green. So that was a big bada boom, very nearly a Wick event. I'll explain that last part in just a moment. But first, the big news. Thursday at about 9 p.m. local time, a Blue Origin New Glenn rocket exploded at Space Launch Complex 36 during a static fire test of the massive rocket. 7 powerful BE-4 engines. That same booster was supposed to be a part of next month's planned 4th launch of a New Glenn tasked with putting Amazon low Earth orbit internet satellites again into low Earth orbit. But to borrow from John Cleese, that is an X rocket. And I quote, "We experienced an anomaly during today's hot fire test," Blue Origin posted rather dryly on social media. "All personnel have been accounted for." Thank goodness for that last part, because as we just looked at, that explosion was one of those earth-shattering kabooms you normally only hear about in cartoons and usually find out later that they didn't happen. So according to Elon Musk's SpaceX CEO, Elon Musk, "Most unfortunate, rockets are hard." The memes came fast and furious, as of course they were going to, but still. So last night's explosion may have been closer to a Wick event than anyone knew at first. Sources suggest the launch infrastructure at LC-36A is severely damaged, and that one of the lightning towers may not be salvageable at this point, and that the transporter erector may also be damaged beyond repair. He added that New Glenn almost certainly will not launch again in 2026, and frankly, a launch during the first half of 2027 would be heroic given the launch site concerns. And that, as a result, it is possible that the company now throws all of its efforts into completing work on the bigger 9-engine New Glenn and abandons the current 7-engine model completely. Which, ouch. Okay, so he keeps using a term, and at one point he said he was going to explain it. I didn't ever see him explain it, so hang on. We'll see if my little producer robot buddy knows, because I've never heard that term before. All right, so I'm going to get back into the notes while we do that. But yeah, I definitely wanted to. Yeah, that's just ouch. Okay. See, this is weird because I've always considered myself a nerd, but this is apparently a nerd term that I wasn't aware of. So, according to my little robot producer buddy, a Wick event is space nerd slang for a catastrophic rocket launch failure that destroys enough launch infrastructure to potentially kill or seriously derail the program. It appears to have originated around NASA's SLS Artemis 1 launch discussions, named after an ARS Technica commentator called Wick, who argued that because Artemis 1 was uncrewed, a pad-destroying failure might end the expensive SLS program without loss of life. So, apparently, a Wick event is when the rocket doesn't just go boom, it goes boom so hard, the accountants, engineers, politicians, and launch tower all have to reconsider their life choices. Good to know, because I did not know that. Learned something new on my own show today. Anyway, so for everybody who hasn't been paying attention, current story line remains the same. We are still, as far as I know, waiting on potential announcements from Trump from the Situation Room. I haven't been able to find any updates, but if there is anything new, we'll probably cover it in the Weekend News Roundup. So again, rockets are hard, and Elon Musk had the perfect summary because he again said rockets are hard. That's funny because it is understated, and it is true because rockets are in fact hard. Now look, I'll make fun of billionaires playing astronaut all day long. I think some of the celebrity space tourism stuff has been ridiculous. Some of these launches have the spiritual depth of an Instagram reel with a booster attached. And yes, there are times when the whole billionaire space race feels like a contest to see who can put the most expensive midlife crisis into low Earth orbit. But I am not going to mock somebody for trying to build rockets. That's different. The universe has a very strict quality control department, and apparently it works in fireballs. Spaceflight is unforgiving. Heavy lift rockets are complicated. Testing is dangerous. Failure is part of development. And if you want a country that still builds things, explores hard frontiers, and pushes technology forward, you have to accept that sometimes things blow up before it works. This is not just true in space. That is true in most of life. We live in a culture that loves results and hates process. Everybody wants the launch. Nobody wants the test failure. Everybody wants the highlight reel. Nobody wants the engineering team staring at melted hardware trying to figure out what went wrong. Everybody wants America to lead. Nobody wants to admit leadership often involves risk, embarrassment, expense, and a few giant fireballs along the way. But that is how hard things get built. And honestly, there is something very American about all of this. Annoyingly rich guy tries to build a giant rocket explodes. Other annoyingly rich guy says, rockets are hard. NASA guy says basically spaceflight is unforgiving. Everybody learns something, and then they go back and try again. That is better than a country that only regulates things, litigates things, and explains why things cannot be done, which I feel like we've been living in for most of the last decade or so until recently. I would rather live in a country where people still try to build rockets and occasionally fail, rather spectacularly in this instance, than a country where the only thing we build effectively is paperwork. So yes, it's a little funny. It's a giant fireball. Of course it's funny. Not made of stone. But the deeper point is America still needs people willing to attempt hard things. And that takes us from the machine side of air and space to the human side. The people who fly, serve, risk, learn, get redirected, and sometimes find out the life they planned was not the life they were actually called to live. Buzz Patterson wrote a piece about why he joined the Air Force, and it fits today because it is really a story about callings. He starts with a young White House staffer once asking him in a condescending tone why he served, and he says he smiled and let the moment pass because she wouldn't get it. That line right there tells you a lot. Some people do not understand service because they only understand career. They understand resume. They understand networking. They understand ladder climbing. But a calling is often different. Buzz's plan was not originally to become an Air Force pilot. He had studied political science at Virginia Tech, went into graduate school for economics, and was looking toward law school and corporate law. Then the financial reality hit. More school meant more cost. He found the Air Force JAG program, which could pay for legal education in exchange for active duty service, and that became his plan. Then the recruiter noticed something else. Buzz had scored high on the pilot aptitude section. The Air Force would still honor the JAG path if he tried pilot training and decided it was not for him. And there is the fork in the road. Sometimes the plan is law school. Sometimes the plan is corporate law. And sometimes God, a recruiter, and a pilot aptitude test look at your plan and say, that's cute. Now go fly the plane. He goes to San Antonio Flight Screening Officer Training School, structure, discipline, purpose, then Columbus Air Force Base in Mississippi for pilot training. Brutal washout rates, hard work, the kind of environment that finds out what you really want, the thing you said you wanted. And instead of law school, he falls in love with flying. He ends up on the C-141 Starlifter. Then, just a couple of years in, he is flying missions connected to Operation Urgent Fury in Grenada. The combat role he thought he had avoided found him anyway, just from the air. That is an American story. Not because everybody needs to join the military, not because every calling looks like a uniform, but because life has a way of taking the plan you made, putting it next to the person you are supposed to become, and saying, yeah, be this guy instead. The Air Force gave him a career, friendships, purpose, service, eventually the White House, and a deeper love for the country. And he says he never regretted it. That matters in a time where so many of our institutions teach young people to be cynical before they have ever done anything. They are told America is mostly guilt. They are told service is suspect. They are told patriotism is embarrassing. They are told the country is something to deconstruct, not something to serve. And then you read a story like this, and you remember there are still people who found purpose in giving themselves to something bigger. That does not mean the country is perfect. It does not mean the military is perfect. It doesn't mean that every leader deserves trust, but it does mean service still matters, duty still matters, and callings matter. And a country that forgets how to honor that becomes a country that produces a lot of commentators and not enough builders, pilots, firefighters, cops, nurses, teachers, engineers, mechanics, parents, pastors, and people who actually carry weight. So yes, rockets are hard, flying is hard, service is hard. Building a life that matters is hard, but hard is not the same as bad. Sometimes hard is where the meaning is. And speaking of American stories that start with people taking a hit and answering the bell, let's bring it home to Oklahoma as we begin to close things out. Now, the Thunder got worked last night. There's no sugarcoating it. 118-91. That's not a close loss. That's not a couple bounces went the other way. That is somebody checked the license plate on the truck because we just got run over. San Antonio forced Game 7. Victor Wembanyama had himself a night. Shea struggled. The Thunder looked flat. Pick your favorite sports cliche because they all fit. But here's the thing. Oklahoma City's not the cute little feel-good story anymore. These are the defending NBA champions. Last year, the Thunder won the whole thing. They beat Indiana in Game 7. Shai was the finals MVP. Oklahoma City got the moment. The state got the moment. And all those people who still talk about Oklahoma like it's just a place you fly over had to learn how to say our name without smirking. And that matters. So now, Game 7 comes home again. Comes back here to Oklahoma. Comes back home to Loud City. That is the whole point of earning home court. You do not win a championship because nothing ever goes wrong. You win one because when something does go wrong, you answer. And Oklahoma City has a chance to answer. You got embarrassed on the road, fine, it happens. Great teams get hit. Champions get hit. The question is, what happens next? Do you drag that loss home with you, or do you make San Antonio walk into your building and deal with the defending champions? That's the question. That is the beauty of sports when it is working right. It gives a city a shared language. Everybody can be mad at the box score. Everybody can second guess rotations. Everybody can yell at the TV. Everybody can pretend they personally would have made better decisions from the recliner with a plate of nachos balanced on their stomach. I'm feeling seen in that line. Anyway. That is part of the deal. But underneath all of that, there is civic pride. For years, Oklahoma City was treated like a flyover punchline. Now the Thunder are on the national stage yet again. Olympics events are coming to the city. The city is growing. The arena conversation is part of the future, and the rest of the country is discovering what people here already knew, that there is a whole lot more going on in this city than outsiders ever bothered to notice. And that is why this matters. Last night was ugly. But ugly does not erase a championship. Ugly does not erase what this team has built and what it has become. Ugly does not erase what this city has become. The belt still belongs here until somebody takes it. So Game 7 is simple. Bring it home, fix what's broken, and hit back. Remind everybody that the defending champions do not have to explain why they belong because they already proved it once. And that's really where this show lands today, red lines and wake-up calls. The court has a red line. You do not intimidate justices at home because you hate a ruling. The tax code has a red line. Government power is not supposed to be revenge porn. The voters have a wake-up call for the consultant class. We are not in a polite mood anymore, and we're not taking your crap. We're not interested in candidates who sound like they were assembled in a strategy meeting. America 250 has a wake-up call for the country. Maybe we should be able to celebrate 250 years of this experiment without acting like patriotism requires a legal disclaimer. History has a red line. Tell the truth. Tell the whole story. Protect religious liberty for everyone, but do not selectively rewrite the founding because the facts are convenient. Oklahoma voters have a decision coming on wages. and they deserve the full picture, not just the slogan, not just the promise, but the consequences of this vote. Iran gets a red line. Diplomacy is welcome, delay is not, and nuclear weapons are not on the menu, and they have never been on the table. Our allies get a wake-up call. If even landlocked countries understand Hormuz matters, maybe everybody else can stop pretending freedom of navigation is an American side quest. And then America still reaches, rockets blow up, pilots find callings, cities take hits, teams come home for Game 7. That's the country in one Friday show: serious, ridiculous, dangerous, stubborn, loud, occasionally on fire, and still somehow reaching for something better. That's why we do this. Thanks for hanging out with me today, folks. Be smart, be kind where you can, be stubborn where you must, and remember, the belt, or the championship trophy in this case, stays here until somebody takes it. I'm Rick Robinson. This has been the Rick Robinson Show. I'll be back in about an hour for the Weekend News Roundup. And to all you YouTube trolls, thank you. Thank you for making my numbers bigger and better. I greatly appreciate it. Bye, everybody.
Robinson Show, where we say what we feel.
Say goodnight, Gracie.